Hello, good evening Facebook. It's me, Yanks Darbo. I just thought I should do a video to campaign for the UDP parliamentarians or aspiring parliamentarians for the upcoming parliamentary elections that are scheduled to take place in the Gambia in early next month. I think is the 6th of April 2017. So I am rooting for the UDP, and as you know, it's the campaign season, and a lot of people are campaigning for their various political parties. So I am doing this video to just basically canvass votes for the UDP and explain why I believe that people should vote for the United Democratic Party. So why do I think that people should vote for the United Democratic Party? I will firstly give you a brief history of the United Democratic Party and why it is important that people vote for the party. Firstly, we could all recollect in the advent of the military usurping of power that took place in the Gambia on the 22nd July 1994, which plunged the country, or threatened to plunge, but it has indeed, which plunged the country into the darkness of dictatorship of Yahya Jammeh. And at the time, the military banned the two major parties that were extant in the country, that were existing in the country at the time, or shortly before the military took over. And that was PPP and the NCP. When they barred those two parties, a lot of people lost hope. A lot of people were scared for the future of the country. And that led to some dynamic and patriotic citizens of the country came together and formed the United Democratic Party. And they looked at all the potential candidates in the country and decided that Lawyer Ousainou Darboe was the ideal person to lead the party with the hope of returning the Gambia to a democratic rule, to the principles of rule of law, respect for and protection of human rights, and good governance. That was the whole intention behind the formation of the United Democratic Party, UDP, and it is still the core values of the party. So if I should tell you one good reason why you should go out there, or you should tell your family members in the Gambia to vote for the UDP parliamentarians in the upcoming parliamentary elections, it would be that those principles, those founding principles and fundamental principles of the party, which are the fundamental values as well of the party, and that is democracy, rule of law, respect for and protection of basic human rights of every Gambian, and good governance. That is what the UDP, that was the bedrock of UDP. That was the foundation of the party. That's what it stood on when it was initiated, and that is what the party is still standing on. So if they ask you, why should we vote for the UDP? Tell them what the UDP stands for and what are the core values of the UDP. And our core values are that of respecting and adhering to the principles of democracy, the rule of law, respect for and protection of human rights of every Gambian, and the principles of good governance. The rest of the other policies, most of the parties, we share those. But these are core values to us, and this is what the party stood for the last 22 years. And we endured so much oppression. We went through bitter trials and tribulations under the previous regime of Yahya Jammeh. They did everything. No party had suffered as much as we did over the last 22 years for those values, because we want to see Gambia return to a democratic rule, to a rule of law, to a statehood that respects and protects the human rights of our people. That's what our people, the party stood for, and that's what it fought for the last 22 years. And in doing so, the party also gave hope to our people that these things are achievable. And that's what they stood for the last 22 years. And they kept that hope alive for Gambians until we achieved that hope and that dream on the 1st of December 2016. And that ushered us into this new-found freedom or new-found Gambia that we have today. Now, I will tell you not to support UDP any day that you are able to point me to an evidence or fact of UDP being in breach of those fundamental principles of the party. If at any date, at any time you are able to point me to a breach of those fundamental principles of the party, I will be the first person to tell you not to vote for the United Democratic Party. But even our ardent critics and our opponents, because you see, I need to make a distinction between our opponents and those that I regard as our competitors. You see, in our current political dispensation, I will regard the likes of APRC and GDC as our opponents, but I wouldn't regard DOI, PPP and the rest as our opponents. I think they are our competitors. We are in the coalition with them, but we are parties. We have different fundamental principles. We differ in opinions on how things are supposed to happen. And as a result of that, we're bound to have friction. You could call it fracas or impasse or acrimony or rancor among us. I just see it as two competing parties vying for positions. And that is what is happening as we approach the parliamentary election. So we are getting a lot of propaganda from our competitors as well as the opponents. But I would rather deal with our competitors than, well, I would rather prefer our competitors maybe beating us to whatever we are contesting than our opponents beating us. Because if APRC and GDC should return back to power, we know where we are heading to. And that would be back to the last 22 years of what we had, or even worse. They might even try to block Facebook and WhatsApp and social media, because if anything they learned over the last 22 years, or if anything they learned during the last election, is that social media is a force that they cannot underestimate. And that probably was one reason why they lost power. So they would go after those things. So we know what our opponents stand for. That is oppression, repression, and persecution. We can't afford to go back to those. So it is our competitors rather that we are having a lot of battles or a lot of back and forth with on Facebook and other social media. Many of them, this is the deal here. You see, some of the surrogates, especially those on Facebook, they don't really mean some of the things that they're throwing out against Lawyer Dabo, or some of the things they're throwing out against Halifa Sallah. They're not intending to hurt those people. What is really happening is, we the surrogates on either side, we the surrogates of the competitors basically, are basically trying to hurt each other. Because we are sending messages that which we know probably Dabo wouldn't read it, or it wouldn't affect Dabo. Because if anything that Dabo had developed is that of, there is nothing that we can throw at Dabo now that which had not been thrown at him over the last 22 years. He had had everything. He had been through worse than what words that we are expressing on Facebook. So I don't think that will hurt him, or it will hurt any of his supporters. UDP had been through far too worse criticisms and far too worse attacks than just words on Facebook. Those are nothing to us. And we know that this is politics. So people will say everything. But it's just the battle of the surrogates. Each side throwing whatever garbage they can throw just to hurt the other person, but not necessarily meaning that they want to hurt Halifa or other people. I don't think that's what they intend to do. I think they're doing it quite simply because they know that you have the likes of Suntu Ture, Bamba Mas, Fode Jaula, and Max Jones, and the other people who are on the UDP camp, and myself and other people. They want to put something out there, maybe put even vitriol against Lawyer Dabo, not necessarily trying to hurt Lawyer Dabo, but they're trying to hurt us because they see us as the fanatics or the surrogates of Lawyer Dabo or the UDP party. So they're trying to say all kind of stuff against the party, just basically to generate reactions from us so that we can react to it. It's the same way as well. You have other people on the UDP side who are doing the same thing to Halifa, not necessarily to hurt Halifa, although Halifa went out to respond to Bamba Mas on the radio, which I think was too low of him. But sometimes this is what is probably intended by the surrogate. So we are at a surrogate battle, you know. I did say one thing before, and that is why I did say one thing in my last video, that is shortly or maybe during the political impasse that we had in the Gambia, that the big challenge for those of us who were in the struggle against Yahya Jammeh is how to transition from the militancy or activism against to activism and militancy for. Many of us struggle to transition, to make the change from militancy against or activism against a regime to activism or militancy for a regime. It's very, very difficult thing for people to do. Many people struggle, and this is one of the things that we are facing. That is why a lot of us still find we try to be as petty as anybody, as petty as you can imagine, to try to find fault in the new government, to criticize rather than to support. Even though there are a lot of things that the new government have done and continue to do, which should attract our applause, but we are not applauding them at the moment. And the reason being is because we are far too entrenched in this wall of militancy against rather than militancy for. So the transition is very hard for us. You find it, the same thing happen in many countries. You know, you have it in Libya. The people who were fighting for so long against Gaddafi literally finds it so hard to change from fighting against to fighting for. And that is the struggle now we have as a challenge. So we need something to fight each other. So that's why when this partisancy comes, it gave opportunity to so many of us who were militants against, who now jump into the bandwagon of fighting against each other. And we enjoyed it because that's what we were used to doing. For 22 years, we were doing something like that against the APRC and the Yahya Jammeh government. That's why the new government keeps saying, well, they need to give us, you need to be patient, you need to be that. And we do not have that patience because we have adapted and formed that mental status of a militant against, not a militant for. So even when they're doing something good, we find it so hard to praise them because we are not used to praising, we are used to criticizing. And that is one of the things that we are seeing playing among ourselves now. So even if I do this video, no matter how good this video is, some people will not be listening to the merits of the video. They will be looking at the demerits of it, the worst aspect of the video. So maybe I might have pronounced the word wrongly. They would be looking at that and make a capital out of that because we are used to that. But we all have to try. Every one of you need to try, except many of you in the diaspora, and try to change. It's a big challenge, but we need to move from that mindset of militancy against to the mindset of militancy for. So that's why I am reaching out to all of you and telling you that I am rooting for the UDP, and I want you all to understand, as I said earlier, the fundamental principles, the core values that the UDP was set up on, it was formed on. And those values are that of democracy, rule of law, good governance, respect for and protection of human rights. Those are the fundamental values of the UDP. And so far, none of our competitors, as I said, we have a different distinction. The dichotomy is very wide, and we got to understand it. The difference between our competitors and our opponents, we need to be very clear about too. Our opponents, I would say, are GDC and APRC. Our competitors, these are people that we are on the same camp with, because we, as far as I am aware, and the last time I checked, we are still in the same coalition with them, and that is PPP, PDOIS, and the GMC, NRP, and the other ones. So our competitors, what brought the fracas or the impasse, or if you want to call it, the rancor, the acrimony between us now, why we are opposing each other, it all came about as a result of the two models that were presented or were advocated by the various functions within the coalition. And the models were as to how best we or the coalition can approach the upcoming parliamentary elections. So the two models were basically, one is coalition-backed independent candidates, and the other is coalition-backed tactical alliance of parties that made up the coalition. Now, as you know, the UDP, and in fact the majority of the coalition members, when they voted, all voted for the tactical alliance. Many said tactical alliance is dead now. I will explain why they are wrong, because they do not understand the meaning of tactical alliance and why it's still, tactical alliance is still in effect, and it's still working, and it's still the best option for us. I'll go into details of that, but let me state something, and this is the criticism of our competitors, not necessarily our opponent, but our competitors. They said the big criticism that we have as UDP is not with regards to UDP being in breach of its fundamental principles, and those principles are democracy, adhering to the principles of democracy, rule of law, good governance, respect for and protection of human rights. They're not saying those. They're not saying that the UDP is in breach of any of those. No. What they are alleging is that the UDP is I don't want to use the T word because I already set myself a challenge for 14 days not to mention that word. But they said literally UDP is a Mandinka party. It's not the first time we had that. Jame said it before. They said the UDP is the cause of the split within the coalition. They said that as well. They said the UDP is power hungry. They said our leader is a dictator. You know, those are some of the charges that have been leveled against the UDP. Firstly, I would say that I wouldn't dwell much time on trying to defend whether the UDP is a Mandinka party or not, because it is not. The reality is that it is not. Quite simply because Aji Amsek, who is the deputy vice president or chairman of the party, who had been very instrumental in fighting for Lawyer Dabo and others when they were, or the executive members when they were sent to Mile 2, and who in fact was instrumental in the elections that brought in organizing the leadership elections that brought Adama Barrow, because whether people know it or not, a lot of UDP members were against UDP going or standing in the last presidential election, including myself. I thought that, well, there was no need for us to even go into election against Jame because it would have been a waste of time. But Aji Amsek, and with their brilliant leadership, they decided that, you know what, the party cannot be allowed to die. We have to let the party continue and let it pave new future for itself under a new leadership, since the other leader, or our leader, was sentenced or was locked up in Mile 2. And that was what brought Adama Barrow. That was how Adama Barrow got to, was introduced into the political scene in the Gambia. And lucky enough, he is the man that was destined to take over, to inherit from Jammeh. If she had not seen or had not been such a leader, we would still be searching for Adama Barrow to come to our aid and get rid of Jammeh. But so, quite simply, the UDP is not and cannot be a Mandinka party. It was founded by Singul Nyasi, Yaya Jallo and the likes. They're the ones who came together and formed the party and then invited Lawyer Dabo, or chose Lawyer Dabo to lead. He wasn't even aware of it. They called him and told him that we have formed a new party and it is you that we have chosen to lead the party. So we cannot be, and we are not. Don't give no tag. No, what I don't want to use the T word because I have set a challenge for myself. So don't use the T tag. Don't use any T tag to any party in the Gambia. Not UDP, not PDOIS, not any one of them. As I said, and I will repeat this, PDOIS, PPP, NRP, GMC, GPDP, they are not our opponents. They are our competitors. So we are on the same camp with them, but we are competing for positions. They are not our opponents. I don't see them as opponents. I see them as competitors. The ones that I see as opponents is APRC and GDC, because if they come into power, they will do something really terrible to us. And we all know what they've done to us in the last 22 years. So if we should allow them to come back through the back door as a result of our wrangling or misunderstanding among ourselves, then we are doomed for another, maybe God knows, because they will bring Jammeh back. Remember, Jammeh is still not dead. He is at, what's the name of the place? And whether you know it or not, these people, they revere him, they respect him, they hold him so high there. They will give him anything if he requests it. So we should never go back to APRC GDC. Despite whatever the wranglings or the quarrels or the arguments and disagreements that we are having with our competitors, we should never let anybody be told that they should vote for those two. Those two represent evil for Gambia, if you ask me. So, our competitors, so none of our competitors should be given the T tag as well. We should battle ideas. This should be a battle of ideas and principles and what we stand for. So the next charge that is leveled against the UDP is that of the UDP being power hungry. We are not power hungry. If we are power hungry, everybody else is power hungry, including DOI, PPP, NRP, GMC, and GPDP. We are all power hungry. We all want to rule the Gambia. You know, so that is not a charge that is not a charge which I will dwell much of my time trying to defend. I'll quickly move to the next one, which they said Dabo is a dictator. He's not a dictator. Just get that right. Everybody get that right. He cannot be a dictator. He suffered so much under the dictatorship of Yahya Jammeh. It would be worse of him to return back to being a dictator. If you don't know the man, I know him. He's not a dictator. In fact, one reason why Lawyer Dabo was able to attract a lot of support from the Gambian masses, it wasn't because of he belongs to a particular ethnicity in the Gambia. That wouldn't have been the case, because Sidia, at the time, Sidia Jatta was of the same ethnicity as Lawyer Dabo, and he had been in politics far too longer than him, and he was leading the PDOIS at the time. So if anything, Sidia would have been expected to be more popular and would have attracted more support than Lawyer Dabo. So I don't think that is not, he cannot be a dictator. And in fact, so let me come back again, because the main reason why he got a lot of support is because prior to even aspiring to become a president in the country, Dabo had been a legal advocate in the Gambia, a lawyer. And during this period, he had offered pro bono services to a lot of people. Pro bono means free services to a lot of people, including my own father in Kafura and my own parents. So that was one of the reasons why when Dabo stood for presidency in 1996, the people in Kafuta started chanting that it is a payback. We have to pay back. You owe us a debt. We owe you a debt and we have to pay back. That was the song which was being chanted by the women folk in the village at the time. And he had done that for so many other people. And that was one reason why when he had the aspiration, when he was chosen by the founders of the UDP, and when he accepted it, a lot of Gambians came to support the United Democratic Party because they knew who the man is, the person that was leading it. And every one of them knew very well that this man is incapable of being a dictator. He was a gentleman, a perfect gentleman. So he is not a dictator. That is not a tag that you can attach to him. And this is to our competitors, he's not, he cannot be. But as I said, our competitors cannot point out to any evidence to prove that we have been in breach of our fundamental principles. And those fundamental principles, as I told you earlier on, are adhering to the principles of democracy, the rule of law, good governance, respect for and protection of human rights. That is UDP. If you believe in those values, then you are UDP. That is what the UDP has been, and that is what we are. And the reason why we want you to vote for our parliamentarians is because those are values that they will have to adhere to whilst they are in parliament. They will not pass a bill that will go against those principles. If they do, then they're going against the fundamental principles of the party. And as a party, as representatives of the party has leverage over them. And that leverage is, if we tell them that you should not vote for this, if they go against our wish, you know what we can do? They can be expelled from the party. If they are expelled from the party by the electoral laws of the Gambia, they cannot continue to sit as parliamentary members. They have to go back to their constituencies and then request a new mandate from their constituents in order to return back to parliament. So that was one of the reasons why the UDP in fact said, the model that was advocated by our competitors, and that is the model of coalition-backed independent candidates. That's why they were arguing that you would not have much leverage over those people because they're going to be independent parliamentarians. They can do whatever they want. You give them 5 years blank check. You want to tell me they will put the figure that you want them to put there. They won't, because they're independent. You can't kick them out. You can't expel them because they don't belong to any party. So that was one of the arguments raised by the UDP and many other people who were part of the coalition, that if we choose this other model, which is the coalition-backed independent candidate, we will lose the party leverage that we have over these people in parliament. And therefore, they can do whatever they want to do. They can even go against President Adama Barrow. What can we do? Nothing. So I will come down to that shortly, but let me just finish the other one, and that is the charges that are being leveled against us. So the last one they said is our competitors are accusing the UDP of being the cause of the split in the coalition. Now that is a cheap charge because there is no split. It's not meant to be a split. They should not even present it as if it is a split. It is not a split. We are still, as far as I am aware, DOI hasn't left the coalition. PPP hasn't left the coalition. They're all still part of the coalition. So why are they talking about a split? what happened is, as I said, two competing models were presented to the coalition members, and the majority of the coalition members, not just UDP, but the majority of the coalition members, and this is democracy, the majority decided that they should go for tactical alliance, coalition-backed tactical alliance. I will come to the tactical alliance because that is very interesting. A lot of people are now saying it's doom and it has failed and it's doomed or doomed to failure. But I will tell them, because a lot of them misunderstand the word tactical alliance. I don't think they understand it, but I will break that down for them. But are we then responsible for the split in the coalition? As I said, there's no split. So why are we making a big capital out of the word split when there is none? Because none of the other parties have left the coalition. They are part of the coalition. So, we are not the cause of any split in the coalition because we voted with the majority of the people. So, two competing models were presented to coalition party members. It is just the right of every party to choose whatever the party wants to choose. And they chose tactical alliance. Let me break tactical alliance to you, because a lot of you are saying that because of the fact that these competing parties are now competing each other at the constituency level meant or means that tactical alliance is dead or is doomed to failure or has failed, because otherwise why would they be competing each other? Well, you know, we still don't understand politics. You see, if, say, for example, the UDP is to win out of all the constituencies that they are contesting at, if they should win, say, 20 or 30, and PDI should win 10, PPP should win 10, we would get 50 out of the 53. Let's give GDC maybe 3 and APRC 0. What tactical alliance means is, because these are parties that are still part of the coalition, they can still tactically ally to vote for legislations or bills that are presented to Parliament by the coalition government or by the borough government. That's what tactical alliance is. Parties fight each other at constituency level, and then they form alliances in Parliament. We have seen that in the UK not long ago between the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. It's happening all across the world. They do that tactical alliance in Parliament to vote for this and that, to vote for that and this, to support a coalition government. So tactical alliance hasn't even started yet. How can it die? It will happen in Parliament. It will happen in Parliament. It hasn't even started. So why are you people burying it? Or you are buying the funeral clothes for it when it is not even dead yet? You're just wasting money, because you shouldn't be buying the funeral clothes when the thing is alive and wants to live and wants to be and is going to be around for long. So let us not jump to that conclusion it is dead. It's not dead. If we believe that this is a failure, or if we believe that the tactical alliance had failed because the parties could not agree to which constituency one should stand and the other should not, or this and that and that. Just think about it. That would have also been a cause for failure for coalition-backed independent candidate. Because the problem you're going to have with coalition-backed independent candidate would have been this. And let me break it down to you. It would have been simply this. You know, people thought that that was all hunky-dory. It was very easy and everybody would easily be, it would have been very easy. All of them would be independent and then we would support. The big problem, and where the big problem would have been, is when it comes to numbers. You see, the big problem in this coalition is that people within the coalition, the parties in the coalition, are not willing to admit and accept and recognize facts. And we want to live in this fictional world, when parties are not equal, you cannot claim that they are equal. Because the moment you want to equalize them, you suffocate the bigger one, because you have to cut the bigger one down in order for it to be of the same size as the smaller parties. This is the problem. This is the root of the problem of the coalition at present. Because these parties all want to believe that they are equal in everything with the UDP, but they are not. The membership of each of these parties are different. And if, you know, in a marriage, the only reason my marriages work is because the wife accepts that she is a woman and the man accepts that he's a man. Otherwise, it doesn't work. If both of them have to act like they're a man or both of them have to be woman, one will start criticizing the other. And that is exactly what we have in this political marriage. Because we have smaller parties who are hell-bent on denying the fact that the UDP is bigger and a majority party in the coalition. And in doing so, because they've refused to acknowledge that, they've refused to admit that, they refuse to accept that, they are forcing the UDP into seeing them as basically trying to kill them. Because what is happening is, if you want to, if I am taller than you and you want me to be equal to you by height, you have to cut my head off, and I wouldn't want to die. Let me give you an example. And this, I witnessed it when I was in the Gambia. And this was during the presidential inauguration. You know what happened? Each of these coalition members, they decided to allocate the inauguration tickets among themselves equally. But the problem you have is, as I said, when people are not equal and you want to equalize them, you suffocate the bigger one. And that's exactly what happened. So you had because I was meant to get a ticket from the UDP. By the time I got to the UDP, they told me the tickets are finished. Because the tickets that were allocated to the party weren't enough for everybody who was UDP. But the other parties, they had enough that they were even giving it to other people who were not members of their party, because they are smaller parties. So equality kills the bigger party in such a scenario. And what happened is, other parties, their executive members they all managed to get in because they had VIPs and other things. UDP, we had Kemes and Jammeh, who are our executive party members, who could not get a ticket because the ticket number we are allocated is too small for the party. We are big. And until the smaller parties accept that and admit to that, then we would always have this fight or fracas among ourselves, because we are not equal. We are not equal in size. So when they come and they said, oh, positions have to be equally shared as well, what you do is, the other parties would all be, their executive would all be appointed ministers, or would all be appointed other positions, whereas we would still have UDP party members. In fact, that was happening in UDP. We had people who were saying, oh, the party executive had forgotten them. So the UDP was a party that is suffering because they had to come down to this level of a smaller party, which they are not, and they cannot pretend to be. So when UDP start talking about their being bigger party, you guys need to listen to that if you want this marriage to work. If a wife is telling you, I am the wife here, you got to accept that. Because if you want the marriage to work, you got to accept she is the wife, or she is the wife in the house. So that is the same problem we have. The coalition could work if other parties accept that UDP has a big majority. You know, you cannot pretend. And then this is the fallacy. You know, a lot of people want us to believe that during the last election, the presidential election, each party's polling powers were equal in terms of attracting votes to the coalition. So they want us to believe that in every 8,000 votes that Barrow had, 1,000 of each belong to the different parties in the coalition. If you believe in such, then you are the problem. Because that is definitely not the case. In every 1,000, I can tell you that maybe 3,000 or at least 2,000 were UDP supporters, and they voted for the coalition because UDP was part of it. If UDP was not part of it, they will not vote for it. So take an example. If you had a coalition of DOI, PPP, GPDP, GMC, and then Dr. Aissatou, they wouldn't have even got half of what the UDP would have got. That is the reality, is the fact. It's not fiction, and we should not pretend. So what I want the smaller parties, they got to accept that they are the smaller party and there's a bigger party. If they do that, then they will be able to appreciate the nightmare UDP is facing. This is not being hypocritical. This is common sense. Because if the other parties understand the nightmare Lawyer Dabo faces, then maybe they will be able to consider, they will be able to even sympathize. They will have sympathy for him. They will empathize with him. But they cannot do that if they are living in denial that the man is just greedy, he's power hungry. But when they finish work as ministers, they go home with no stress. But when Lawyer Dabo finishes work, he comes to his office, there's thousands of UDP executives. Oh, you got to work we don't have. How can you go and surrender everything to them? Those are smaller parties. Just look at them. How many people do they have? We are all here. We don't have no position. No, nothing. They will not know the sort of nightmare that old man goes through every day. The guilt that he faces, that this was a success, that his party contributed a lot to, but his party is not gaining anything out of because they have to equally share. But imagine if all positions are allocated, GPDP or GMC, which are just 1, 2, 3 party members, you know what will happen? Or Dr. Aissatou, you know what will happen? They will go and advertise jobs outside for people to apply. But the UDP will be struggling to choose who to give position to. So until the parties accept, and this is what we want them to understand, you got to understand that we are a bigger party, not because we are trying to show our chauvinism or egos to brag, but you're doing, the moment you accept it, then you will treat us fairly. But if you treat a bigger man as a small man and you give him a small food, you're killing him, you're starving him because he's a big guy. You can't give him milk as you're giving it to a baby. No, you cannot do that. That won't work. So that is what the coalition people need to first admit. They need to accept it, that we are all members of this coalition. And as members of this coalition, we stand for each other, we fight for each other, and we have each other's back. So if Lawyer Dabo has a problem with his party members, he can approach PDOIs and tell them that, look, this is the problem I'm having. I have so and so and so and so. If you people do not have anybody for that post, why don't you give consideration to my people? But when he wants to say that they said he's power grabbing, when he wants to tell them that they said he is power hungry, or he wants this to be hijacked as a UDP government, that is where the problem is, my brothers and sisters. And if we appreciate that problem, then we begin to address it. But this jumping on each other and then throwing garbage at each other, that is not a solution. It won't solve any problem. And we will continue to have that problem. And it would lead to our real opponents. And our real opponents, as I said, are APRC and GDC. It will give them a ticket through the back door to become MPs. And the next minute, they will even make life harder for us. So let us be clear. Let us admit that the parties, though we are all equal or whatever we want to call it, but we have to accept that there are other parties bigger than others in the coalition, and they have massive support and massive followers. If we tap into that, we can make this coalition work for a very long time. And there wouldn't be anything, no challenge that we cannot overcome in the future. So, next one. So, we are not power hungry. And we are not a dictator. We're not trying to grab all the things. We just want you all, our competitors, to understand our nightmare as a party. A bigger party, very big, with a support base that is far bigger than any one of your parties. You've got to accept that. And don't see it as us causing split in the party. No, we are not causing a split. We want you to recognize and understand and empathize and try to be considerate when we come and say, okay, we want to field in this person there. We want to field in there. Don't tell us you cannot because you want to UDP-nize this. If you had not brought that up, we would see you as you having our back. And you know what might happen tomorrow? We could even say, let Halifa lead. What's the big deal? There's no big deal. We could tell him to lead. If Barack Obama from the minority group in America can lead America with so many white people who had despised and enslaved his ancestors, why couldn't we do it? We who have never done such a thing to each other in the Gambia. Instead, we loved each other, we married, we belonged to the same religion. So let us understand that point, that we are not equal, and we have to accept that. Some of you don't want to hear that because you take it negatively, but it is not to be taken negatively. You've got to understand where we are speaking from. And so the tactical alliance is still alive. And if you deem the tactical alliance as a failure, and the reasons you've given it is because we are competing each other, just think about it. If we were to go on coalition-backed independent ticket, you know the problem we would have? Then how do we share the 53 constituencies among ourselves? It would have been a bigger problem. In fact, it would have been a bigger problem, because if you tell us that you are going to allow only 5 UDP members to contest, to be put forward in order to stand for the coalition, then you know what will happen is we would have difficulty as to who we're going to choose among all the supporters that we have within the party. You could create a massive war in the UDP, which would then reach to you in the coalition, because there will be a big war in the UDP, because who are we going to choose? I mean, we got so many supporters from Katong to Koina, and you want us to tell them that out of the 53, we're going to choose only 5. Where are we going to pick them from? There will be all kind of finger pointing within the UDP. Oh, they won't understand. And if they don't understand, we expect you people to understand, because you are our coalition members. Being in the coalition means we watch each other's back. So the coalition-backed independent candidates would have been even bigger problem. We have seen the PDOIS. They said they want 20. They want to field in 20 parliamentary aspirants. You know what they did? They had to even get somebody who is a sitting member of the APRC, because they're that sort of people. But we could have even got someone to stand against them in Serekunda, but we decided not to do that. So equality is a problem, and they keep insisting on that word, we are equal, we are equal, we are equal. But let us be very careful, because equality, when people are not equal and you want to impose equality among them, you only suffocate the bigger one, and that is not a good thing. So the tactical alliance is alive, and independent one would have been a bigger problem for everyone, in fact. So I know I have been rambling for a while. I've been on this video for a long time. So I'm just going to probably try to wrap up. And what I will tell you all is quite simply this. I will tell you this, that we, the surrogates who used to be part of the struggle, first challenge that we have, we need to get out of that mindset of being activists against to being activists for. The two are different. The nuances are a bit wider than we appreciate. So if many of us who are now at this loggerhead, who log heads and fighting each other like no, if we want to help this coalition government to progress, and that is what we all want. I believe that's what we all fought for. I don't believe that we fought to get rid of Jammeh only to end up chopping each other's head with like the Libyan standard, or what is happening in other countries, or had happened in other countries. After you get rid of this dictator, people cannot come together and then rule or have a decent leadership. It makes people to do, like Iraq also had similar scenario. because people find it hard to change the mindset from being anti-against to being pro. We got to move. We got to do the conversion. We got to convert from being anti to being pro. The moment we start being pro and we start praising the good things that the coalition is doing, and they're doing a lot of good things, you know, we're just not admitting it. Just imagine if Yahya Jammeh was there by now, we would be talking about something else. So many things we will be talking about. Maybe how many people would be dead by now. So, because we are not talking about how many dead people, how many people are being locked up, we know that there are many people that these people have released. We need to now be pro-activists. We need to be activists that are fighting for the coalition, making a case for the coalition. We need to change. And I did once stated that the big challenge for the coalition is now selling the battered image of the Gambia. We need to sell the battered image, because Jammeh had battered the image of that country for so many years. He had tarnished it. We need to now polish that image and make it more. But we are engaged in this wrangling that nobody understands, because we ourselves were used to that fighting against the APRC. It's like we are addicted to it. We can't just get away from it. Maybe we need a therapy. So many of us need to go to therapy, and then we realize that actually we can support. Not every day do we have to go anti. We have to go against. We can support, but look at it. We are very petty, you know. We go after everything, the mistakes that people do. Like I said, many of them wouldn't even bother to listen to what I am saying. They'll be looking at the mistakes that I will make in my pronunciations of words, or even maybe my terrible English grammar. That's what they will try to dwell on and try to make a huge capital from. I believe that, like they said, a lot of people who are, this is the new tag that is given to some of the people who are, probably have legitimate complaints. They've been regarded or being tagged as looking for job and all that stuff. I don't think that is the case. I don't think these people are howling out there because they want jobs alone. Maybe jobs might have parts, might have a contributing factor in some people's case, but not everybody. We got to understand that people have legitimate grievances. You cannot fight against a dictatorship or a system and then you find yourself with the same system sitting on top of you. And that is what is happening with regards to a lot of ambassadors and a lot of other government civil servants. And what is even worse, yesterday I was talking to a lawyer who is a practicing lawyer in the Gambia, and he was telling me that they're bringing all these Nigerian judges back into the country. And they could not understand. Now, those are challenges that the coalition as a government, with our competitors, we all face. And we need to fight for those things. We need to ask for those Nigerians to go. The Nigerian judges who were mercenary judges allowed themselves to be used by Yahya Jammeh to do all kind of things against Gambian people. How can we expect those people to now deliver justice for us after they had abused the same system for far too long? You got the like of Minte in the American embassy, in the Gambian embassy in America. Minte, who had been insulting us, saying all kind of stuff. You know, when you say, people say you are got to be reconciliatory and all that stuff, I understand that we have to be, but sometimes, you know, it's just difficult to reconcile with those kind of things. You know, but the coalition government said we got to be patient. We got to be patient. We got to criticize when it is necessary, but we don't have to dwell so much on the criticisms and become a lot more pedantic about it. It's just worse, and that's what a lot of people are doing. But we, the surrogates, who are now in this battle of what do I call it? Battle of whims, or battle of what would be the right, appropriate, maybe adjective phrase to use for it. We are in battle of egos, I would say, because some of them, they're not even making any sense. They just come to you and then try to be even more passionate. The moment you say something about UDP, they either tag you as you are being T, and I just use the initials, so I hope you all understand what I mean by T, because I don't want to mention that word. I have set myself a challenge for 14 days not to mention that word, so I'm not mentioning it. But the Thank you, Usman Jawara. It's the battle of political wits. You know, a lot of us are engaged in that surrogates because we are entrenched in that warfare. We used to be at war. We don't say anything good about the APRC. We are used to going after APRC so much that it is now, that is our mindset. Many of us need to go through therapy because we need to change to at least be praising, be able to praise things that are good and that is happening or that are being done by the coalition government. Not everything is bad that they're doing. And this word that there's a split in the coalition, we got to be very careful about that word. As I said, there is no split as far as I am aware. As far as I last checked, the results of my last checked, the PPP is still part of the coalition. They have not resigned from it. Neither has the PDOIS resigned from the coalition. They're all part of it. We need to see UDP, PPP, the battle between UDP, PDOIS, GDC, no, not GDC, God forbid. The battle between PPP, GMC, UDP, NRP, and then GPDP, and Dr. Aisha Toure, as a competition between competitors in a particular sector or sect. We are competitors. We are competing with them. We're competing to be the bigger stakeholder in the coalition or whatever. That's the competition. That is always happen. That happens between even siblings. You hear about what they call sibling rivalry. You know, you got siblings fighting over who should be much loved by the president, and that is just natural. That's always bound to happen. But it is not the dichotomy between us and them is not the same as that between us and APRC and the GDC. The APRC are after our heads, and if they should come through the back door, if they should find their way back to Parliament, you know what they will do? They will impeach our independent president and then bring back Yahya Jammeh. And one last thing I want to also talk about, and this I might do a video at some stage later on, and that is about this gentleman agreement that the coalition have about Barrow being in power for 3 years, and then the mandate that the Gambian people have given to Barrow, which is 5 years. This is something that we have to talk about, because in the Gambian constitution, I don't know, maybe someone can help me, some of the legal luminaries in the Gambia can inbox me a particular section in the Gambian constitution which makes a provision for how a president can resign from presidency. I haven't found it there. And one reason why it is not written there is simply because we have never had a president in our country's history who tendered a resignation letter to the people. That never happened. We had to kick the last two presidents that were there out because it was that sweet. They don't want to go. They didn't want to leave. We had to force them out. So because of that, I don't think the drafters of the Constitution had ever contemplated a scenario where we would have someone who would become a president and the next day will turn around and say, actually, I don't like this position. It's not nice as I thought. It never happened. I don't think it will ever happen, in fact. You know, I think because the position is so nice, anybody who sits there or who occupies it would want to stay for good or who want to be there for that. What we need to do is we need constitutional amendment, and that's one of the reasons why I criticized the last amendment that was tabled in Parliament. It's because I wanted to see a term limit. That's, I think, should be our foremost priority now. We need a term limit so that no president can stay beyond 10 years or 2 terms. That should be our call for everyone to hammer that on the coalition leaders now. Let them table that before Parliament as soon as possible, because we need that. That guarantees the future for not just ourselves, but our future, our children's generation and our grandchildren's generation. So, as I said, this video is not meant to be a lecture. It's meant to canvass votes for UDP. I am rooting for UDP. I have explained the principles, the founding principles and the fundamental principles of that party. And that party always and was founded on the principle of democracy, rule of law, good governance, respect for human rights, and protection of the same. That is what UDP was founded on, because UDP was founded in 1996 or 1997, one of those years. It was founded as a result of the advent of the APRC, the military junta's usurping of power from Sadauda's government, and then plunged the country into the darkness of dictatorship. And our people's aspirations and hankering and yearning was for a return to democratic rule. This was the hope that UDP gave to our people, the light that they brought to them. Many of our parents joined the party not because it was led by a person from their ethnicity. No, as I said, PDOIs at the time had a person of their ethnicity. But they went for that party because they believed that it had given hope. It brought hope. It was the new light at the time. Many voted for it because they want to see an end to the military rule. And UDP, for one thing that we have to give credit to them, was despite the trials and tribulations, the bitter trials and tribulations they had been subjected to for the last 22 years, which they had to endure, they never budged. They never succumbed. They never packed their bags and flee. They stood their ground. They lost comrades. Along the way, many of them were killed. It's the only party that still mourns about the death of their members. And just in the next month, on the 16th, they will be mourning the death of Solo. Many of their party members went, but they never wanted to succumb to fear because they don't want that hope of the Gambian people to die. And they stood for it. They fought for it. They did everything. And that's why I did said, because of the trials the party had gone through, the Gambian people have so much sympathy for the party than many of us in the diaspora appreciate. So if you go to them and tell them UDP is bad, terrible, this and that, people will ask you, what bad and worse have they done? So what I want to tell you all is that if you vote for UDP, if you vote for our party's parliamentary members into parliament, those fundamental principles of the party and that which the party was founded on, the principle of democracy, rule of law, good governance, respect for and protection of human rights, are going to be the cornerstones of every legislation that the party's parliamentarians vote for in the next parliament. They will not vote for anything that comes to subvert the will of the Gambian people or subjugate them into or subject them to persecution. They wouldn't do that because those goes against the fundamental principles of the party. And maybe many of you do not know Lawyer Dabo, but I know him very well. And I have always known him to be very kind and very soft indeed. So you will not find dictatorship in the UDP. We fought and suffered so much under dictatorship. We should know better. That's one thing we cannot repeat. And we cannot do that. The power hungry, everybody is power hungry. Every one of us. You tell me who would reject the presidency, the position of presidency. Halifa said he rejected the position of cabinet minister, but he wouldn't reject the position of presidency. So there's nobody who would reject the position of presidency in Gambia. We all have that. It's just a natural instinct in all of us. And I think I have been on this video for about 1 hour. So I'm going to leave you all here. And those of you who live in Combo East, like myself, who hail from the Combo East constituency, I am rooting for the candidate called Lamin AF Konta or Lamin FM Konta, or just to avoid any mistake, Lamin Konta. Please vote for him in the upcoming parliamentary elections. And I shall be coming back to do a lot more videos I'm not going to directly enter into the battle with other people, because some people think that because they can speak English means that they can bully us or beat us on the narrative. I tell you what, if it is English, I'm not scared. I can do my own broken English, and do videos on Facebook or anywhere else that you people want. I am ready for the challenge. But we got to talk about principle, substance stuff, not about pettiness or personal attacks and other things. We got to get our minds, we got to get those things from our mindsets now. We are meant to be at a position where we are now. We should be celebrating because we have achieved something that which is the envy of the world. We managed to defeat a dictator in an election, and we in the struggle together made that happen. So how can we now just turn on each other and try to make each other look like we are terrible people or we are dictators, when we were comrades who fought together to end that dictatorship? And we knew what we went through. We had our fallen comrades, Jaganjai, Lamin Sane, 30th December heroes, Mahao Cham, Solndau. These were all people who were part of the struggle with us. They couldn't be here today. They would love to be here today with us to celebrate what we have achieved. So let's not let all of that go to waste because of this mental entrenchment or this dogmatic opinion that we have about, or this active, this mental state of being a militant, or the militant mental state that which we formulate over the years of, over many years, as a result of many years of fighting this dictatorship. Because obviously it's bound to stick in, it's bound to be, our bodies are bound to adapt to it. We are bound to adapt to such kind of mental state, as if we are warriors fighting every day, not willing to basically be a pacifist for a day. So let us transition. Let us make that transition. It's a challenge for us. And I believe if we work hard at it, we can indeed transition from being the antis, the militants, the activists against, to becoming activists for. And that's where we're supposed to be. Because if we are now against in our own coalition, can you imagine where the APRC people would be? They would be sitting down and laughing because they can see us doing their job for them. I don't think that is what we want to do. And yes, let's politics. Let's do the politicking. Let's go after each other. But let us not be too personal. And let us remember, we still remain, we are competitors, not opponents. The others are our opponents. And if we do the job for them, against each other, we are making their job a lot more easy for them. So you could see them, they will be having a barbecue because they don't have to do anything. We are fighting each other. And someone just corrected the name there, Sonko Usman, thank you. He said, the candidate for my constituency is Lamin FM Konta. So all the people in Kombois, please vote for Lamin FM Konta. And all the people in the Fonyi Jarrols, Fonyi Bintang, Fonyi Bandali, Fonyi whatever, I want you all to vote for the coalition. The reason being is this: the APRC seems to be of the view that that is their stronghold. And don't let them succeed at that. Because the APRC, they stand for dictatorship, they stand for persecution, they stand for oppression, they stand for, they evince the worst of Gambianness in all of us. And they should be ashamed of themselves. But some of them are just still going on about doing all these things. So let all the people of Fonyi, Kiang, everywhere else, let us all vote for the coalition. As I said, if Doi are to become, say, the majority in the parliament, I don't think they will vote to bring Yahya Jammeh back. Neither would PPP do, neither would NRP do, neither would UDP do. But I don't trust those other two, GDC and APRC. If they win the majority in parliament, even if they don't impeach Anam Barrow, the one thing they will do is they will suddenly not be willing to change the constitution to allow us to prosecute Yahya Jammeh. And that's one of the things we need, because at the moment he has indemnity. We can't initiate a criminal charge or a criminal action against him, because the indemnity clause in the constitution provided that for him. So I'm going to end it here. I said that word many times. I still haven't been able to end it. Maybe like they said, Lune. I don't know how to end it, but Lune, do they doing it? Yeah. Mandingolko Ming Kudima Beka Jongosi. But I have to end it here. Basically, what I was saying in the local languages, I don't know what the direct translation would be in English. But let me just end it here. And I hope to do more videos, hopefully, before the elections, to explain it to you and to try to canvass your votes, to try to make the case for UDP, so that you all know that we are a party that you should not be scared of. You should not fear us. We are not a party that will oppress anybody. And in fact, if we are anything, we are a party of all. As I said, Ajam Sek is one lady that should be credited for keeping this party alive today. She's from Banjul. If she has been able to keep this party alive and was, because of her foresight, was able to introduce Barrow to the political scene in the Gambia, and that Barrow, by coincidence, happened to be the man that God had destined to take over from Yahya Jammeh. That woman deserves our applaud. He deserves our respect, and we are not going to be respecting her if we then take the party and give it a tribe. Sorry, I shouldn't be saying that word, but and give it an ethnic tag, which it doesn't deserve. It's just an insult to her, and people should not tag any ethnicity or ethno-language to the UDP. Just see the UDP as the future of the Gambia, a party that which invites everyone who shares the ideals of the party or its fundamental principles, and with that we can make a better Gambia. A party that suffered so much of brutality, of dictatorship, is not a party that would introduce dictatorship in the Gambia. I thank you all for watching this video, and I thank you all for liking it as well, and those who shared it, I thank you all. Thank you all, and bye bye, and happy weekend from me in London.